Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Craig DeLuz here, coming at you from the the Gun Rights Policy Conference 2018 with the Firearms Policy Coalition. We're here doing interviews, talking with folks who are here, trying to give you guys a flavor of some of the things, some of the speakers, some of the people that you can meet when you come to the Gun Rights Policy Conference. Now, tomorrow, it started today. With AmCon. Tomorrow it'll be going on. So if you guys want to be a part, you got to come out. It's in Chicago right now. I know, Chicago gun rights. I said this before, kind of an oxymoron. But yes, there are people in Chicago who are deeply desire their constitutional right to keep and bear arms, despite what some of the politicians here might say. But it's been a great time. I had a chance to meet some really, really good folks. And I have with me now a gentleman who's putting together a documentary. That one that I think you guys are going to want to hear about. And, it's just it is an awesome idea and an awesome topic. It's something that I had thought about, and he is actually doing it. And with that, I want to welcome Mr. Argo J, the writer, producer, and director of BlackOps, the documentary.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate being here.
We appreciate having you, sir. So do me a favor. Tell our viewers a little bit about BlackOps, the documentary.
All right. Well, first things first, BlackOps, the OPS is an acronym. The OPS stands for Opinion in Popular Society. So the entire title would be Black Opinion in Popular Society, meaning how does society think about Black Americans or African Americans when it comes to firearms? And the answer is generally it's been a negative type of connotation. We're drug dealers, or we're criminals, or thugs, or something along those lines. The purpose of the documentary is to dispel those negative myths and those negative stereotypes. We're not all criminals. I'm an educator in the city and state that I live in. You're not a criminal by any means. You work in several places where that wouldn't be acceptable. But for some reason, no matter who we are, there tends to be a negative association that tags along with us when it comes to firearms, and it's just time to break that perception.
Okay, so how did you get started? Because I know people come up with ideas for documentaries. Like I told you, this is something that I thought about, but I was like, and I do film.
Right.
And I'm like, well, how do you get started? I mean, how do you begin that process?
You just start. If you have an idea, you find out and do the research that it takes to find out where you need to start and what platform you need to start with and base your next movements off of, and then you just roll. One day I had the idea for the documentary. I started out on YouTube initially, and I got tired of the same carbon copy, cookie cutter gun and review shows or the same political commentary, and I wanted to do my own thing. So I stepped away and had to figure out what it was I wanted to do. And one day it just came to me like a ton of bricks that the same message and the same idea that I was going to put across on my YouTube channel might need to go on a larger scale. And I said, well, let me write it. And I sat down and I started writing. Almost 2 months later, I was finished writing and the documentary was born. So.
Now, do you have a background in filmmaking or in documentaries?
I do not. My degree is in criminal justice. I did go to school in Atlanta, and I did take some classes at Clark Atlanta University, and I did do a couple of independent films back in the day. But I'm definitely not a filmmaker by trade. Like I said, I'm an educator by trade. But I have a passion for films, and I have a passion for teaching, and I have a deep desire to educate the people of America about the truth behind firearms and the Black community. So,
have you experienced any challenges specific to the type of documentary that you're doing? And if so, what are those challenges? And then also, what are some doors that have opened that you didn't anticipate would be open for you?
As far as pushback, I haven't gotten any pushback or anything that in that regard as far as challenges. The number one challenge, I believe, is funding. And that's only because I'm unwilling to sell out the documentary. Because the purpose, I think, is a lot bigger than people understand on the Hollywood side of things. I introduced it to a couple of producers and production companies, and they were all in, and they loved the idea. But then the first thing they say after they say, oh, I love it, they say, but we want to, and that's where you lose me, because that means you're going to change the narrative of the story, and that's not going to be an accurate assessment of what the community looks like, and I can't deal with that. So in that regard, that's one of the main challenges, is trying to get the documentary funded 100% by us for us, because that's who it's for. And I've gone to crowdfunding sourcing to help fund this or whatnot. But other than that, I haven't received or had any real challenges, because everybody wants to be a part of it, and everybody wants to help and wants to push the idea because they believe it's a good idea. Now, the second part of your question, which was, what was the second part of your question?
Basically, you know, what are some doors that are open, or good things that have happened that you didn't think would happen?
A lot of people, like even today, even here at this forum today, I've been introduced to a lot of people who have connections that I don't have, resources that I don't have, and they have willingly thrown them at me. I mean, not just, you know, I don't know how your show does. I have a very foul mouth, so.
Don't. Our audience is used to it. So
okay, all right,
it's all right.
Yeah, so, you know, like, but seriously, they have absolutely just bombarded me with help and resources and things that I haven't had, and that's what I've come across more times than not. Is as soon as I say something, somebody says, you know what, I have somebody in mind that might be able to help you here, or might be able to, you know, help you with funding there, or might be a good participant for the documentary, or they own a film company, or they work with the film company, or I've just gotten nothing but help and nothing but good things to say about the people who've tried to help me out here along the way.
So now, you're going around the country and you're interviewing folks. Are you taking your film crew with you? Are you hiring local film folks when you go there?
Honestly, it's been a skeleton, you know, crew for sure. I definitely have one friend who's dedicated. He has a film company of his own, who's helped me out a lot. One Shot, Kill It Media. And that's just it. It's just usually three of us that are on the road, you know, with our whole setup, and we're trying to knock this out as bare bones and as grassroots as can be. So,
well, you know, one of the benefits of technology now is that, you know, you have the ability now to be able to afford the equipment and the software to be able to do to be able to tell
Absolutely.
a message and put it out there in quality. Now, the biggest challenge sometimes with funding is, because you have the ability to do that, a lot of people who don't have a good message, don't have a good idea, are still making film, and so it's hard to get your idea, you know, even when it's completed, out there.
Right, and for your idea, once it is out there, to be noticed, because sometimes so much of the nonsensical things that are put out take so much of the shine from the things that are really, really needed to be heard or really needed to be seen. And how do you fight that? You know, when people would rather listen and watch stupidity versus something that could help them out, you know.
Okay. So now I'm going to take this, and this is probably partially in the vein of your documentary.
Okay.
So the first thing is going to be, how do you deal with individuals when you encounter them, well-meaning or not, who have a particular perspective about black people when it comes, and specifically when it comes to guns, but when they had that preconceived idea, and I think sometimes the worst ones are the well-meaning ones.
They are. They usually are.
What's your mental attitude when you deal with that, and then how do you approach them to kind of get them to see, for lack of a better term, the error in their perspective?
No, I get it. You know, excuse me. When I first started, it would get under my skin. It would. I wasn't used to it, and I wasn't ready, you know, and I'm sure you understand in the community, it can be very brutal at times. I think, though, the first thing that I have to do now, and that I found that works the best, is I have to listen. And I have to listen and hear them for what they are actually saying, because what I interpret it as may not be what they're saying. And most times, they're trying to ask a question, but are uncomfortable asking the question and don't know how to ask it.
I've said that, you know, I'm like, sometimes, you know, if someone gave you a Rolex watch, but they gave it to you in a torn up paper bag, you wouldn't just say, well, I'm just going to throw away the Rolex. You know, you'd at least take the time to look in the bag, see what it is, and notice it's a Rolex, and accept it for what it is, even though it comes in really bad packaging.
Absolutely.
Sometimes the stuff that they really mean well, and they're trying to say something good, or maybe they're a little, but it comes in a really messed up way.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's good. Now, on the flip side, how do you deal with, you know, people in the black community who think, well, you know, who have a certain perspective about people who are quote unquote gun nuts or
Right,
people who are
right.
active in the 2A community, because I parse them out. There's gun owners, and many gun owners are not pro-gun.
Right.
Then there are people who own guns and are pro-gun, but are kind of in the gun closet.
Right,
Right?
right.
And then there are the people who are vocal pro-gun people.
Absolutely.
How do you deal with kind of the misconceptions or some of the perspective or generalities, the negative generalities that people have about pro-gun people?
You know, I think I approach it from a standpoint of, you're not alone. Because I thought that at once too. At one point in time, I thought that very same thing, or a lot of those very same things, until I actually got in and said, you know what, it's not like that, and I had to see for myself, but I had to find out. Now, do some of those things actually happen? Do some of the mistruths and ideas and stereotypes about pro-gun people, do they actually happen? Yeah, they are. I mean, there's some reality to them, but I think a lot of times if we focus on the negative all the time, or we focus on the things that frighten us, it keeps us in a place where we never grow. And I teach people from that standpoint that growth is what's necessary. If you want to learn anything, if you want to learn about protection or protecting your family or whatnot, that's growing, and you have to be open in order to grow. So you have to open your mind and see things for what they are.
Well, and I think that's a great perspective. I mean, both, I think, from what you said, and even some of the other speakers when they were talking about kind of reaching out or growing our base, one of the things that they talked about is, once again, being willing to listen to one another and realize, okay, let's focus. We are Second Amendment. We are here for the Second Amendment. I always say this, we can work together on the things that we agree on. We can work passionately and aggressively together, or coordinated together.
Right.
The things we disagree on, then we can work passionately separately on.
Or we don't have to discuss them at all.
Or we don't have to discuss them at all. And quite frankly, if it's not relevant to the conversation,
why bring it up?
Right? And be sensitive and understanding. You know what? There are people who are on one side of affirmative action, people who are on another. There's some people who are on one side of traditional values, we'll call them, and some are on the other. There are some people on one side of taxation, and some people on one side are on the other.
Absolutely.
None of that really matters.
It doesn't.
Here.
It doesn't.
Not here. Not in the Second Amendment. But one of the things I do believe we do need to be careful of is understanding that in many cases the positions come from an ideology.
Right.
And a recognition of where that ideology is. And this is one things I think is unique about the Second Amendment is I believe that there's ideological reasoning and rationale on both the left and the right to support the Second Amendment, and that comes from the belief that we have a fundamental right and responsibility to defend ourselves and defend our nation against a tyrannical government.
Absolutely.
And I always say I'm a card-carrying member of the vast right-wing conspiracy. But I always say this to my friends who are not. I say, if Donald Trump is the person you tell me he is, that you are so concerned he is, do you want a Donald Trump government to be the only one with firearms?
Absolutely. And I'm laughing because I find it funny because this is a conversation that I've had before. So if that is what you're opposing, and you're opposing his stance on everything, or anybody's stance on that, then why let that particular person or being or group win? Why let them win? Fight that fight so that you can protect what you believe in and what you love the most. And that's why I fight the fight that I fight, because within the Second Amendment community, it has a very thick blanket, and I think sometimes the blanket is lifted just like on a bed, more to this side or to the other side at times, but it encompasses everything. It covers everything and everyone, and I believe that that's what people need to understand and they need to believe, because like you said, everything and everybody has the right to protect themselves, and it's a human right. It's not a right that anybody can tell you or take away from you. It's just not.
Right. I always find it interesting because I deal with, and once again, being in Sacramento, California, I deal a lot with people both in the political game and outside of the political game, and I believe that there is a huge misnomer that okay, so the Democratic Party in general, and I say in general, in particular in kind of the left and the left and the right coast, on the coastal Democrats, urban coastal Democrats, politicians tend to be anti-Second Amendment.
Right.
But in actuality, and because black people tend to be Democrats, there's a myth, there's a transference, well, they must be anti-Second Amendment or anti-gun. And I have found that once you get past the politicians, that's just not the case. I know plenty of gun carrying, gun owning brothers and sisters who firmly believe in their constitutional right to keep and bear arms. And we a lot of times we agree on almost nothing else. But that's one where they are right there with us.
Absolutely. And that's the importance and the beauty of the Second Amendment. It absolutely is for everybody. Like we discussed earlier, it didn't start out that way.
Right.
And that's fine. But I'm not one to turn my back onto something that is beneficial to me just because it didn't start out that way. Well,
and on that, it just hit me. And that's one of the great things about our form of government is the ability to, when our core values change as a nation, we have a process by which we change our Constitution, which is an enumeration of our fundamental beliefs.
Right.
And when we passed the 14th Amendment, that then extended everything that maybe wasn't meant for us in the very beginning is now meant for us and is now codified in the fundamental document in the contract that we have.
Yes.
That our government has with us.
Yeah, right. I was going to say that's our contract with them. They signed
that.
Right.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. So anyway, it makes a huge difference. So do me a favor. Let folks know how they can follow you, how they can get more information on the documentary, and give me an idea. What are you thinking in terms of when it might be available?
Best case scenario, we're looking year and a half, because it does take a very long time to film a movie. But you can get in touch with me at all social media. That's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube at AAArgo JAY. That's Argo J with 3 A's. Also, if you want to find out where to to go for the documentary, I'm on Facebook and Instagram as well, and that's under BlackOps the documentary. Or if you just put BlackOps doc, you should be able to get a link right to it. But everything is linked on any of my social media, so you'll always be able to get to the documentary.
Fantastic. Well, once again, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you
for coming on. I think you had some things to say that people needed to hear here.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate you being willing to step out there and make that word heard.
No worries, man. Put it all on the table, man. Balls to the wall, man.
Amen. All right, folks. Well, that's going to be it. We're going to I'll be back with some more interviews over the rest of the weekend. I hope you guys enjoy these. Share these with folks. Also, GRPC, they're going to be streaming on their YouTube channel, on their Facebook page. They're going to be streaming the entire thing tomorrow. So make sure you guys are tuning in. That's the Gun Right Policy Conference put on by the Second Amendment Foundation. That's where you'll find it on their Facebook page. Anyway, you guys take care. Remember, this is the Firearms Policy Coalition. We are the home in the fight for civil rights. Got to use them or you're going to lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.